Hello, world. This is Shruti Pandey, and today on itishruti, it's for the second time that I'm going to talk to an ex-colleague, and every time this is for the second time, as I said, it's happening. It feels really very special to connect to an old colleague and talk about things that really matter. And today, I've really created and curated some burning engineering questions, which I always think want to talk about and share about. So. Thank you so much, Dipan, for giving me your time today. Is currently an AVP product engineer at LogiNext. So good to have you. And you have always been a very avid follower of my podcast. So extremely grateful for that. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Shruti. Thank you for having me. Great to, I think we had great time when we were in Browstack, and of course, good to see you. A lot of podcasts that you bring in. So, good learning experience. I hope I can add good value.
Absolutely. So without any further ado, I have my first question for you, which is engineering, as I mentioned, all burning engineering questions. The first one is with respect to, saturation of engineering in India. I mean,
Yeah.
if I want to elaborate, I can elaborate it to another level from my experiences
I
as
mean, what exactly the saturation you are referring about?
so. The thing is, if I take it's almost 13 plus years of my,
Hmm.
engineering experience. I passed out
Hmm.
in 2011, but I started of course, we start from 2007
Hmm.
to 11, right? 4 saal ka course. If
Hmm.
I remember, even at that time, it used to feel like so many people, everybody wants to become an engineer or doctor, or if
Hmm.
you're a studious kid, that was the only two
Hmm.
options for us, right? But
Yeah.
even back then, 2007, I could feel somehow that बहुत सारे लोग बस
Hmm.
इंजीनियर ही बन रहे हैं आईटी ही लेना है
Yeah, I know.
कंप्यूटर साइंस ही
Okay.
लेना है अब्रॉड जाना है ऑन साइट मिल जाएगा एंड आई रिमेम्बर व्हेन couple of years back when my cousin they were wanting to get into engineering and I used to say नहीं इंजीनियर मत बनो कुछ भी बन जाओ इंजीनियर मत बनो तो mother would be like खुद तो बन गई है दूसरों को बनने नहीं दे रही but it wasn't from that case it was like there's so much new things happening there's so much that the new
Hmm.
generation can do and bring in why just settle with
Hmm.
engineering when we have already hit saturation when there are not many jobs or good jobs comparatively in our field so saturation of engineering do you feel that is really the case or
So actually speaking, I'll tell you. So choosing engineering as your graduation sort of a degree
right,
versus actually choosing engineering as a profession for rest of the life are two different things. I
correct
mean, when I choose engineering, I didn't realize there are things like this. But if I were to see it, yes, what is true is that I think every year, I think lakhs of students apply on engineering, right? There was a time when if I think in my father's day, if you are a graduate, like some government job to pakka hai. It is just that
correct
you want to do better, then you do something else.
correct
Then it came to a point that okay, BSc becomes sort of degrees. You don't really expect campus interviews and stuff. Then you do something else and skill building and stuff. But engineering and medicine remained the hot favorite. I
correct
think that trend of people choosing the engineering, medicine, or MBA for that matter is primarily that once you do that, your job is kind of secure, right?
right
And that's actually less of a being brave, more of being safe, honestly, right? And it is no longer true when then just about everybody goes there. So
correct
which is true. I think if somebody has to pull out a liberal art sort of a career, it is still far few. Okay, engineers are too many in that sense. But I still see other side of the spectrum, honestly. Many people who were in my batchmates in back in 1997 when they were doing graduation. Today, if I look back, not more than 10% would be actually doing core engineering sort of thing as a profession. Okay, they would do some MBA, also some other job. Some of them probably, of course, they got into education back in the engineering colleges, and that's like okay, they're still in the engineering field domain. But it is still like it is just a stepping stone. Then you do something else. Real engineering, as I started my career, back in the day, and then from post IIT Bombay, yeah, the opportunities to do hardcore core engineering tasks were still far few at that time. Correct. So when I started my career from IIT Bombay, there were hardly any, cool startups, so to speak.
Right.
There were hardly any, core research labs or something like this. Hardly any VC funding coming in. Today, I think we have this 100 unicorns in India, which is like last 5 7 years this thing. So if you look at it that way, actually employability of the engineers have increased over the past years. But of course, the supply just keeps shaping up, right? So uh, I think it's not really about whether you choose engineering, just for the sake of it. It's about how do you apply, how keen you are actually into the creative aspect of it. How much you are really willing to do the tinkering, build things, have the fun around it, is actually going to make your career. It has, if you really enjoy building circuits, building robots, building software, building products, whatever it is, there are enough opportunities. And there are, of course, if you just dragging it because okay, just let me get this degree and then I'll be like safe, right?
Right.
There is no safety in numbers. Okay, so
Correct.
that's the that's my understanding.
No, this is so amazing, and I want to, have my follow up and also my second question around this because I remember when I did my job, 2011 was that time when Lehman Brother crisis had just hit the US, right? 2008, 2009, and we didn't realize what would happen, and suddenly that dream of engineer banenge, job अच्छी मिलेगी, पैसा आएगा. Suddenly that was like
Hmm.
पिछले साल के बैच कोई कुछ जॉब नहीं मिली है हमारा क्या होगा. So all of that was
Hmm.
happening. And if you look at COVID, again that cycle repeated, right? Previously, these
Hmm.
cycles used to repeat in some time, but now I think that cycle has increased. And I remember
Hmm.
when my first company was Infosys, there was a very famous quote from Narayan Murthy, of course. I mean, he's become
Hmm.
controversial these days, but I think he had mentioned one
Hmm.
very important point back then, which was about, employability of engineers. How are you really employable? Forget about how many jobs we have, but and the mismatch between number of engineers and number of seats or bench or etc. But how many of them are actually employable? So would you want to share
Hmm.
on the similar lines? I thought it's extending to the same,
Yes,
like the curious
correct.
of employable engineers.
I think yes, there is a concern here, and I think it is not really a very. Uh, I mean, it's not really so hard to actually having this problem solved, but somehow things are actually much worse than they ought to be. In fact, compared to if I just look at something 10 years back versus now,
Yeah,
things should have been actually much better, whereas it's actually, I feel it is becoming worse, and
yeah,
for a variety of reasons. So, like I have a very bad track record. I think so I work very closely with most recruitment teams in every company that I work with. We like keep building teams and so on. And most recruitment teams would actually come back with, "Yeah, you have such a extremely high rejection rate." And like I mean, I work with them like a team, but they hate me for this thing. Why? What do you really look for in people? And I'm like, look, I'm super lenient if the person is good. All I'm looking for is like common sense, right? It just sometimes just goes simply missing.
yeah.
Now, here is the thing. What I see people, and this is a wasted opportunity for most engineers. I
Uh,
have seen good people who for just for sake of things, they actually don't materialize the opportunity they have today. Well, I have seen times where getting a job slot, getting to an interview is not something very straightforward. You have to do
right.
hard and you have to really, struggle for it. Today, there are lots of plethoras of opportunities that do exist, right? But I think today's kids get away with whole FOMO thing, right? Just few years days, everybody wanted to be data scientist. Nobody wants to do something else.
Mhm.
Then now it is AI engineering, so it's just a software engineering in some other tag name, but somewhere there is there.
True.
So because you are looking and chasing FOMOs, right? There is just a whole crowd of people who really don't understand. I recruited, I think, last year, a year and a half back. I was building my own, AI, machine learning, data science capable team,
Mm.
and I find everybody wants to say, "Oh, I want to be the data scientist." They have no idea about statistics. They have no idea about basic math. They just think that okay, once I get a tag, again, do the same thing
Yeah.
that once I get a tag,
Yeah.
then I'm with the flow. And
Yeah.
once I'm in the flow, ना तो अगर बस चलेगी तो मेरा भी destination आ
Right.
जाएगा.
Right.
This is a this is a bad. This is where you actually choose what you are good at instead of introspecting what you are good at it, what
Yeah.
you are actually capable of doing it,
Yeah.
and why do you think certain things. And even if you say, okay, I am determined to do this,
Mm.
okay, what is the basic skills that you must apply yourself? Learn things by doing. I remember when I was, when I was in engineering, first and second year, I was just getting bad grades. Okay, I was just like, this is not happening. Okay, I just took a pause. And
Wow.
I was in electronics engineering. I was like, ये ऐसे नहीं होगा. मतलब this is not just एक ऐसे भी करके exam pass नहीं करना. Then
Right.
I started. I went to one of my seniors, and we had this magazine called Electronics for You. We just pulled out one complicated circuit and all that. He said, "Yeah, I wonder anybody in this college can do this. You are just trying to do some circuit which does not work. Do one thing. First year में आपको you got some circuit, no? Try build that." I
Mm.
said, okay, I'll start with this. And then I actually started building a lot of these circuits myself, a lot of these, troubleshooting those things with very barely adequate, simple tools and all. And then whole next 6 months, maybe I would have bunked a whole bunch of classes, but I was just doing things my own self.
Right.
And that is when I developed the key, said, okay, this is what it takes to get the transistors to work. And
Wow.
once you get that basic sense, I can still troubleshoot. I think recently when my kid was in high school, we started like doing some of these things again. But I can still troubleshoot some of these basic circuit because it's just simple common sense. You
Correct.
put a voltage here, you get the voltage here. It's
Correct.
not really rocket science. But once you have the core underlying principles understood, then you are a practitioner. Then have the capability. Then as I look for in my recruitment, if you have that basic sense of how things work, then I really don't want to give you and ask you corner and remote questions that you might not have heard of it. Maybe if you come in a job and you have to work on this, you go to ChatGPT or Google search to figure it out. But
Correct.
if you have your fundamentals in place, I would not actually reject you for that. But is your thinking right? That
Yeah.
is most important thing. Today, people are just in rush of certifications and mugging up theories or trying to, build portfolios, whatever it is. So today's people are actually really, really more career focused. They are very aggressive on where the trends are, and they're just trying to get flow so that they get a very good positions and all. But they
Right.
are forgetting something very basic. Do the thing you like. Do
Yeah.
the thing you naturally are capable of doing, and uh, that is why. And the recruiters are also chasing in the same thing.
Yeah.
I built the entire data science team here, right? But I think a few years back when I would like apply, no, but do you have like 10 years of experience in deep learning? I said there are only few people in the US who has been doing deep learning. It is not it's not even there yet
Yeah.
in the market. But people have that. So recruiters have this chase of buzzwords,
Correct.
right? And because recruiters have the chase of buzzwords and keywords and filtering criteria and all that,
Yeah.
uh, the candidates are chasing to say, okay, I can get some sort of a keyword in my listing. You just need good four keywords and you're up. I mean, how many things you actually do in your everyday job, right? But there is a whole new machinery of how do you get through this FANG interviews, how do you get, crack interviews, and this is now becoming new entrance exam sort of a mindset, right?
Yeah.
And that whole, I think, culture is going in the absolute wrong way. I
Yeah.
think big tech companies, they have a problem because millions of them apply. So they want reasons to, strip away the top 0.01% of the formula. But if you really look at it, if I were to build a company, I would want to really find spark in the people who have their art in place and have the heart in what they want to do. That's it. I
Wow.
don't think there is anything else
Right.
really matters, right?
Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely.
yeah, I think a whole bunch of folks are chasing, spending a energy in wrong areas to really get into the reputation league. Instead, just love to get to work which you really, really, feel good about.
It's ironic because Three Idiots had released when I was doing my engineering, and we I think we started off as a generation where वो बोलते थे ना कि इंजीनियरिंग कर लो फिर देख लेना लाइफ सेटल हो जाएगी ये
हाँ,
10th कर लो
right.
लाइफ सेट हो जाएगी 12th कर लो लाइफ सेट हो जाएगी समझ ही नहीं आता लाइफ सेट कब होगी फाइनली एंड आई थिंक वो बहुत अच्छा डायलॉग था वो सिर्फ डायलॉग नहीं है दैट्स द ट्रूथ व्हेन ही सेज ना कि तरक्की के पीछे मत भागो मतलब यू नीड टू रियली लर्न योर आर्ट
हाँ,
यू सेड इट्स 110% ट्रू क्योंकि इफ आई एम नॉट गुड एट व्हाट आई डू और व्हाट आई लव और व्हाट आई नो how will I and I think ironically as you again rightly mentioned it is actually a big fear for the fact that everything has become वो kind of a thing कि वो टैग होना चाहिए वो
hmm.
टाइटल होना चाहिए वो वर्ड होना चाहिए वो वर्ड कहीं से भी आ गया मेरे सीवी में दिखना चाहिए तो it's really gone for a weird talk or
And
a
I'll tell you, and a confession, to be very frank, it's not the some uh, uh, sort of a quote that I say, let me adopt this. It was not like that. I have seen that people are chasing all around, and I know that, okay, मेरे से नहीं होगा. I would better do sit and do what I like to do, and I can do it. And so for me, that is how I have evolved. Honestly, it is just naturally how it has occurred to me, and I'm like, okay, I'm better off that way, right?
right.
So
आई थिंक देर इज अ वेरी फाइन लाइन एक वो जोक होता है ना कि अगर आप इंजीनियर बन गए तो घर वाले आपसे इलेक्ट्रिसिटी मकान ये कुछ भी करवाते हैं सो एक तो वो चीज होती है कि अगर आपको वो नहीं आ रहा है ना सो पीपल वुड बी लाइक सीरियसली एन इंजीनियर एंड देन यूल बी लाइक नो आई एम नॉट एन इंजीनियर बट आई गिव यू रीसेंट एग्जांपल एंड व्हेन यू आर टॉकिंग अबाउट सर्किट्स एंड एवरीथिंग राइट कि टीवी का स्क्रीन अगर पूरा ब्लैक हो गया वो common sense has become so uncommon these days and I kept saying to my dad and I kept saying to the electrician who came कि इसका power supply नहीं आ रहा है कैपेसिटर उड़ गया होगा and when an engineer knows his thing or her thing they are like ये क्या बोल रही है इसको कैसे पता उसमें ही नहीं चल रही उसमें पावर नहीं जा रही है आई थिंक इट्स सच अ थिन लाइन कि इंजीनियर्स को नहीं आता रहेगा ना तो घर वाले से पीछे पड़े रहते हैं कि तुम्हें आता नहीं इंजीनियरिंग क्यों की और जब तुम्हें पता है तो भी एक प्रॉब्लम है सो third and engineer joke and coming to my third point is everything around like you mentioned कि सब चीज एक वो डेटा साइंस होना चाहिए डेटा साइंस क्या है पता भी नहीं है पर क्योंकि amazon जाना है अभी से ही लग गया वाली चीज so I don't there's another beast that is hunting all of us which is artificial intelligence and to be very honest I don't think artificial intelligence is something new to be very honest मैं तो गूगल सर्च को भी artificial intelligence बोलती है जो हमने train किया है but this has become again one of the buzzwords which has. Do you really think it's a big threat to engineers, or is it just fluff, or it is like 50-50%? Like, can you share your opinion on this?
so I'll split that into two parts, okay? And then I'll go into a little bit of a history of AI.
Yeah,
Because I learned one of my first experience in AI is when I was in BE college. That time AI was unheard of in most of the
yeah,
colleges around. There was no this thing, but one of the professor, one of the chief engineers in neighboring town, he had this enthusiasm about AI and he wanted to like teach students. So he was taking. So I had my first elective in AI back in '97. Okay,
wow,
and I'm like, this is something is ought to be there,
yeah,
And then you know what they used to teach that time with all the search algorithms.
huh,
This is a state-space models and stuff.
hmm,
And this is all basically what existed in the 60s and 70s. In the 60s and 70s, if you could do theorem proving class of problems, right?
yeah,
It used to be called today. So if you have this Dijkstra algorithm, which your Google map uses to give you the shortest path between your home to office, was born that day. And
wow,
that day, it was considered AI. Today, people will say that's not an AI.
right,
Okay, and that exact thing you can actually, and as you put it out, pointed out. So I was in GDIF, and for a reason we wanted to revamp and augment the recommendation system for books.
Got
So
it.
one of the things I wanted to do is like the way page ranking system works, right? Uh, because inherently, recommendation systems essentially rely on if the same user clicks both the books, that means
Correct.
somehow there is a connection. It doesn't matter what subject they are, but these things are brought together. Now,
Correct.
of course, if you don't have high level of traffic, right, these connections are generally very feeble, so the recommendation is not very very strong.
Hmm.
But the content of this book and content of this book. So if there is some sort of a ranking, so you want to really promote the best books irrespective of this thing, which are what goes back to presentation. So
Got it.
one of the interns approached me. So I said, okay, this is the completely new thing you did. And in a couple of weeks he come back and says, but sir, इसमें machine learning किधर है? I was like, look, dude, I mean, I'm talking about what Google did to do a search, right?
Yeah.
Is what we want to do with the recommendation system.
Yeah.
Correct. That's the thing. I mean, karna hai, you call it AI, you don't call it AI is not my problem.
Correct.
Honestly. If you find the problem interesting enough, please do it. So what do you call AI? It's just
Yeah.
every decade that definition have actually evolved completely. So the earlier it was essentially all the state search problems which has evolved over time. And there's a statement I was just recently reading it again from there's a book by Russell, which is a classic book, which is like a textbook of AI evolving over these many decades. It covers all the aspects and says before the complexity analysis as a subject was not matured enough, people thought that I'm quoting right from the book, is that people just thought that pushing more compute and memory would essentially allow you to solve arbitrarily large scale problems.
Wow.
And this is exactly so true back in 2025.
Correct. Can you
Correct?
just tell the
Because that's
name of
exactly
the
what
book
people are.
and the author? This is so
Yes, yes. So this is Russell and Norvig,
okay.
Artificial Intelligence. Okay, it is a classic textbook, and I can send you the reference where this is written. I was actually rereading a
Yeah.
part of this, and I was like, "This is exactly what is happening today after 40 years."
Correct.
As is, right? And
Correct.
every generation of you get a breakthrough, and then
Yeah.
people say, "Okay, if I just make it bigger, does it work?" Right?
Yeah.
So AI has evolved from those search algorithms into machine learning, into statistics, into big data, into these LLMs
True.
in various generations. And there are so many things. The moment it starts becoming established, the people say, "Okay, this is it. ये तो नया ये नहीं नया चीज आएगा वो that is again."
Right.
Honestly, but that's fair. I think the technology of LLMs and technology that has come up in transformers is genuinely good. I think deep learning that we have seen in 18 and 19 is has a solid base. So it's not that tech is not there. I think
Correct.
there is a hype, and there is every technology has also gone through a hype cycle.
Yeah.
We have a hype cycle of VoIP, hype cycle of IoT, hype
Yeah.
cycle of all of these things. Some of it remains, some of it is floods away. It's up to you what you bet on. If you
Right.
are really trying to learn something, these are all interesting stuff to do. If you are betting on businesses, if you are betting on your career, so if you try to do in the betting way, I think
Mhm.
it can be just dangerous because then you never know what will actually come out at the end of it, right? The whole AI agents, a lot of I think 80% of the so-called AI agents that people write today are essentially 100 line of wrapper code on LLMs, right? All of it is inside that, and it is no different. In 1999, there was a dot-com burst, and people then started reporting back in 2000 that this was just a small, simple website which just started having X million dollars valuations and so on. Like you had pet.com and all that stuff, right? It was just a basic website, and then there was nothing else. And people still started investing in it. And what do you do about it, right? It is exactly do you see things now in AI agents, but yeah, then that's a buzzword. So everybody now wants to do AI agents, right? Nothing wrong about learning because the technology has a potential which is unique that was not there probably a few years back. No doubt about it. Right? It's how you use it, how you apply engineering, how do you do the entire rest of the things. So if you want to make an enterprise grade applications which actually automate a hell lot of workflow, it is a lot of engineering and a lot of hardware. And the
Yeah.
buzzword part of it is actually very small, right?
Yeah.
So it is not about the magic box. It's about what is all around it. And most of the engineering is essentially all the hard work, right?
Absolutely.
Most people tend to like go behind the shining stars, but it is the rest of it which really brings the value in, which is always the lesson. And no matter the time, no matter the decade, no matter the technology at hand, it is the real details which wins,
Yeah.
right?
I think again coming on the common sense part of it, if you don't understand these things or just the basic, forget everything but just the
Hmm,
basic. To layman, it looks like oh magic. मैंने ये कर दिया ये आ गया कुछ जादू हो
hmm,
गया and it is actually
correct.
hard. And when you mentioned about your book recommendation wala, thing, it reminded me of oh it was probably on the similar lines and similar time of Amazon when Amazon was happening there.
Hmm,
If only there would have been something here,
hmm,
because it's very similar what you said to me. Maybe would have been developing something else, but it
hmm,
really
hmm,
reminded me of the classic example of Amazon. And it's
hmm,
crazy and it's actually refreshing to talk to an actual engineer who understands and calls a spade
hmm,
a spade and sees bullshit and doesn't camouflage it and put jargon over
hmm,
it, but say भैया ये bullshit hai. So thank you so much, because just again rounding this off with an example of mine. IIT engineering करते समय we had gone to IIT, me and a couple of other friends of mine. There was this course of ethical hacking. So I was like IIT के
hmm,
अलावा ये कहाँ हो सकता है, right? There was hardly
hmm,
2 or 3 days of course. हमने उसका VPN हम कुछ नहीं कर पाए because everything was like ये IIT है, आप इसमें कुछ नहीं कर सकते, आप इसको access ही नहीं कर सकते, हम आपको देंगे ही नहीं. And then with self study and common sense I realized ethical hacking is nothing but testing. अगर टेस्टिंग तुम एथिक्स और कॉन्शियस से ना करो तो हैकिंग हो जाती है. ठीक से करो तो टेस्टिंग होती है. सो आई थिंक इट्स जस्ट how fancy we can make things. And sometimes I also wonder, when we are creating something like an Amazon or a Flipkart for example, there are many traditional businesses, especially in India, who have been doing word of mouth, or who have been surviving on local physical accessibility basis, right? कि उस शॉप में जा सकते हैं, देख सकते हैं, खरीद
hmm,
सकते हैं. Most of all these physical nature shops and shopkeeper, they never really crib that much how much engineers crib, every time a new technology comes out. And you can correct me,
hmm,
I'm wrong, because this is so crazy. I mean, hoteliers, those businesses should be like अरे ये कर दिया हमारा बिजनेस चला गया, बट दे आर सो अडेप्टिव. ठीक है स्विगी पे भी डाल देंगे, ठीक है जोमेटो पे भी डाल देंगे,
hmm.
ऐसे भी केटर करेंगे, वो डिलीवरी भी दे देंगे फ्री का. So
And
it's
I think the thing is that if you know accounting, you know it for 100 years. It's not going to change. If you know one technology, आपने मेहनत करके technology सीखा, then there's now there's a new in the market. And it's like, so I think that's probably the root of कि ये क्या है अभी नया आ गया. But I think there's one more point I will add in
yeah,
that this thing with AI. I think it's a classic question, and I think one of the most hype-making question is, will AI take away the jobs,
everybody's
right?
job.
So the more people, more you scare people, the more it actually proliferates. It's like the bad news will propagate faster than the good news, really
Yeah.
speaking, right?
Yeah.
But I think there is more, and there are a lot of statements recently, like Mark Zuckerberg said, uh, the we will, AI will replace mid-level managers and or entry-level coders and all that. Uh, the Sam Altman said, the new model they're coming up will give you PhD level answers and all that.
Mhm.
I was in PhD in
Correct.
IIT Bombay and I dropped out. Uh, One very simple question, and these things are actually you can just poke it and you realize that how hollow these things, some of these things can be. Number one, 99% of the jobs in the world pretty much pays in whatever competitive rates do not require PhD. PhDs are like overqualified for 99.5% jobs in the earth, right? So number one, uh, are we, do we care about that, or do we care about what happens to the this thing, right? If you have, say, okay, you got to have AI so good that it replaces the junior coder and middle manager, then
Mm.
5 years later, so the juniors will probably not have a job. 5 years later, how will there be any senior managers
Right.
for that matter? So this is a broken thing. This is the new way of looking at things in life. There are new technology, new societal order that might arise out of it. We are trying to retrospect into how actually the world works today. It's like saying that, uh, in the past there were paper offices. Every offices had papers and registers and everything.
Right.
Once the digitalization come, it does not look the same, right?
Correct.
So unless you rethink the whole order of the world in the past,
Mm.
right? Some
Mm.
of the statement has actually no meaning. It's not about correct or wrong. It doesn't actually mean anything,
Mm.
right? Just to like take the scare away of it is, if you have done something interesting, and it will have profound impacts. So I'm not saying that okay, AI will have no impact. AI will have probably as much impact the way internet has done to our lifetime, basically, right?
Yeah.
Now we want everything online because it's who will have the hacker, who would want to have the hard work of, physically managing things as long as you can have it physical, right? The same way, same exactly the same way, and remember we are still at the like dial-up connection age of the AI in that sense of a matter, right? It is still, some people say itna bytes mein kya hi hoga, but then we
Right.
have evolved over 2 decades tremendously, right?
Right.
AI will change a lot of things, but just look at basic things. Like for example, let's assume,
Mm.
and hypothetically, but let's assume that AI software development becomes 10x faster. What
Mm.
would actually imply? Which is, let's say today we have like about 100 unicorns in this country. Most of them would be roughly around 500 to anything from 200 to 1,000 people as an employee base, right?
Mm.
If AI software development is becomes 10x faster, right? It would shrink it down to like 25 people company,
Mm.
correct?
Mm.
25 people company managing engineering stack. I mean, sales is also on its own path, but
Ah.
let's say 25 people, 30 people company is managing a platform which is as good as a unicorn, right? It
Mm.
doesn't mean that 500 other people have lost their job. It's just that now you don't need to build gigantic 500 people
Mm.
companies, right? Or gigantic 5,000 people companies
Yeah.
and so on, right? It
Yeah.
will shrunk. It will shrunk down from their scale, and then I would rather take to a dozen friend of mine, and then another 10 15 people and so on, and I can have a fantastic, and I don't, everybody doesn't have to be unicorn, everybody doesn't have to be uh, aim to be a Google. I can actually run pretty much my own company with this kind of a tool set and automation available. And then what really matters is how I think, what my ideas are, what my product is, right?
Yeah.
And I can just churn it around and try things out. What this implies is that if you're smart enough people, you will actually have a lot more opportunities in your own way. Your product development capabilities, your understanding of market capabilities, all of these things are basic skills, right?
Absolutely.
What will shrink actually is that in a larger companies, you need collaborators, scrum masters, project managers, coordinators, all sorts of things, right? The classic general manager of the 90s is gone, right? Because in today's world,
Yeah.
most people can do collaboration very easily, correct? So
Absolutely.
same way, it is this horizontal jobs which is all meant to just human to human connections in place, right?
Mm.
Those things actually will go away because those things are not required if your average footprint size becomes 25 50, 30 people as opposed to 500 people, right? A
Yeah.
tremendous impact right there. And most importantly, this is not something unique. Instagram was like a 2 dozen people when they were $1 billion company
Yeah.
acquired by Facebook. So
Yeah.
it's not the first time in history, but it will happen a lot more often. So I
No.
think
No. No.
AI will not take away your job. It's
Yeah.
only going to accelerate how things can be.
I think this also, and I was actually in my mind supporting your thought of correct hiring also. When you're putting so much of conscious effort in hiring, this is exactly for that. क्योंकि आगे चल के उसका और हमारा मैच नहीं हो रहा है, चीजें नहीं वर्कआउट हो रही हैं या ले ऑफ्स हो रहे हैं, उससे तो लाख गुना बेटर है कि आई हायर द बेस्ट पर्सन जिसका अपना टेम्परामेंट विद रिस्पेक्ट टू द प्रोडक्ट एंड विद रिस्पेक्ट टू द वर्क मैचेस, राइट? एंड I see two sides of the coin to this exact thing. One is, like you're giving this example without even AI, and leave AI aside, Zerodha is like 30-35 engineering folks.
Yes,
It never grew,
exactly.
even after getting so much of money, even after supporting so much of open source, they never hired one person extra, which actually means that it's all about common sense communication and, just reducing the noise which is unnecessary. And that is the beauty of engineering. And another part is like you're mentioning about the FOMO with, youngsters or, the generation where they are like, acha, ye tag lag jayega, to अच्छे job. I think with the rise of founders, and I hope no engineering god will curse me for this, for saying this out loud, because I think there is a growing FOMO in founders also, where they are like, हम कुछ ऐसा बोल दें, हम कुछ ऐसा बना दें कि ये एकदम आउट ऑफ द बॉक्स लगे. एंड देयर इज दैट इज माय एग्जैक्ट प्रॉब्लम विद फाउंडर्स. आई रिस्पेक्ट ऑल ऑफ देम बिकॉज दे वर ब्रेव इनफ टू क्रिएट समथिंग, राइट? बी इट Sam Zuckerberg, Narayan Murthy, whoever that might be, all respect to them. But just going crazy with their level of FOMO is also some new psychology we need to understand, because this is getting crazier and this is not going to help anyone, right? कि हाँ ठीक है, मैंने ये जैज वर्ड लगा दिया तो अचानक से मैं अपने वेबसाइट को इटर्नल बोल दूंगा, अचानक से मैं अपनी वेबसाइट को जियो हॉटस्टार कर दिया, ये मर्ज हो गया. So all of the things are good, everybody is trying to be good or do good, but when I try to create something as an engineer, my only motive as a person at a conscious level is कि I help people and not add to the miseries of them, right? I think वो जो फोमो के चक्कर में फाउंडर्स का अलग ही कुछ रैट रेस चल रहा है ना उनके खुद के साथ, दैट इज बिकमिंग वेरी डेंजरस टू से. Are you getting?
So it's a so I mean what you're saying in largely is right, is that there is a layer of FOMO in every layer. In every league there is some element of FOMO. In every league there is some element of chase. That yeah, you want to be in the spotlight. You want to be somewhere. You want to be. I think some of the best, greatest founders that you can then reflect on over the past never really bothered about the limelight of it,
Limelight,
right?
absolutely.
So that is always true. I think if you just stick to the the mission you have, if you stick to your why, right, and you keep at it, eventually, yes, you will get what you all put effort around, and what you are all there for, all the hard work that you put in. So it is, I think somewhere, I think that whole media thing is always there. I don't know. Somehow a lot of people are like that. Or maybe people who want to have this side of the glamour and enters into entrepreneurship because that's sort of a thing. But yeah, I mean, everything has its own place. Let's see.
No, I totally. This will be so much heart to heart conversation, Dipen. I This feels so good, really, and मैं आपसे घंटों बात कर सकती हूँ क्योंकि it's like you've gauged the pulse and we are talking the same language. So it's so much easier to
Hmm.
understand the sentiments without, feeling कि अरे, without the fear of judgment, कि ये कहीं ऐसा तो नहीं सोच रहा है मैं पागल हूँ, मैं क्या बकवास कर रही है, क्या सोच रही हूँ? हाँ ठीक है, पागल नहीं हूँ, थोड़ी सी हूँ पर इतनी भी नहीं हूँ. So this is actually great. And my final question to you, I think this podcast, this recording would be incomplete if I don't ask you this, which is the fact that you have quite a few patents to be modest, to sound modest on your. So, if that's not a problem or not controversial, or I don't want to make this trivial or anything, I don't suffer from any FOMO. In fact, I feel very, clear podcast sometimes. So, if it's okay to ask, can you share your experience or your date or your, something about them which would be actually helpful to people who are listening to us?
So we had so I was for around 10 and a half years, almost close to 11 years. I was in a startup called Viewbites, which is
Yeah.
a sister concern of Radiant.com. So I was there from the beginning, and I built a whole team there, and we had a tech platform to do it. I think deep tech word did not existed back then. I think, in my definition, if you could do something patent worthy work I would classify that sort
Okay.
of a thing as a patent. So I majored in video, so I kind of had a clearer understanding on how MPEG videos and broadcast and things work. But I was never part of a broadcast domain as a market per se. So when we started the company, we hardly had any information about actually how these TV transmissions actually work and all that. I had to like literally go down to cable operators, cable head ends and all.
Nice.
And some of these young guys, they were kind of thinking, हम लोग these guys don't even know कि कौन सा connector कहाँ लगता है, and they are like, okay, हम technology बनाने आ गए करते करते. So I can understand their sort of sarcasm around this,
Correct.
very frankly. But I think the idea was in Viewbites, what we wanted to do is like you have a television beam that goes across the country, right?
Mm.
But they essentially get intercepted by these cable operators. So cable operators will then transmit through your to everybody's home.
Right.
So at that time, you want to intercept that beam for that ad slot, replace that ad slot in real time, and then everything goes fine. So you will watch your same program or match or whatever, but exactly for that 30 seconds, you could now have 10 different advertisers in 10 different cities,
Yeah.
right? Which will completely change the way television advertising can essentially work. Now it is like a real time beam, right? And you can't degrade the quality by passing it through a box and all that. And it has to be so synchronized. And television broadcasts are not really super simple, videotapes. They're live streams going in and all that. So it's super risky. So most broadcasters were wary of this kind of an idea that okay, I don't want anybody to temper my beam. Uh, so now, US, this technology existed. I mean, in the 90s also, US, this technology does exist. So it's not something that we brought the concept itself. But all of this would be like for every channel in every place is $100,000 of
Yeah.
a bill that you have. So we decided, okay, let's do it on a PC. Okay. So what if you get a beam, gets into an industrial PC, and it does everything in software and takes it out, and it should be just as real time, noiseless, uh, and super clean on all these things.
Yeah.
And so this was something which Rediff MD chairman then Ajit Balakrishnan said, okay, we'll do it in software. I said, but you still need a physical thing. He said, we'll use PCs. And I was like, I know the domain, but I know that nobody has done something like this before. Okay, I don't know how do you build a real time system on a non real time operating system, right?
Okay.
That too with no hardware support. So
Okay.
no exactly. So basically the goal is we'll build no physical hardware to actually make it happen. It will be pure software. So the algorithm itself will be software. The entire synchronization and you unbundle the channels, put everything that you do, recognize those frames, put those things back, again put it back, everything in real time without putting excessive delay. So these are all talk about milliseconds,
Wow.
processing those 750 frames in and out, and there should be no glitch in the audio and video,
Right.
and it should be flawless in your on your screen, right?
Right. Huh.
That is what we did. So we had some total 4 patents were granted. I
Huh.
think we had a couple of more in the pipeline, but I said okay. By the time we were like exhausted in terms of other uh, things to do, but those 3 patents are actually granted in US and in Europe, right?
Wow.
Three unique ideas. So 3 were tech. One of them was actually more of a business sort of a system that we had developed. So those things, like it took us some 4 years and so on. But this is what this patent was all about. So uh, building a real-time system out of a non-real-time box with a very basic hardware, right? And then we had and we had deployed it over like 300. I mean, we had 300 servers, so across 30 different places. We had put it all across the box, and we used to manage centrally with very little on-field support. And we had a direct integrations with all the broadcasts. So from where the spot gets live all the way down to where it gets this thing telecasted, that entire platform is also something we built, which is like a more of a software development, not a part of the patent, but that was also something we did as part of Viewbites. And all of this, like we were, what, about 16 people in engineering and about 10 people in operations.
Yes.
Okay.
Amazing. What is the name of this patent? If you can name it.
So this is basically the system of method of uh, I forgot the full
Okay.
title, but it's
It's
a
okay.
method of uh, method of real-time video editing. I think that is what it is.
So I
So,
have really two questions. When I was listening to this, मेरे
okay.
दिमाग में खुराफात पक रही थी. One is,
Uh,
so let's take an example of a little back when the only thing on Indian television was probably a दूरदर्शन. तो दूरदर्शन भी तो
uh,
दिखाता था, राइट, उनके सीरियल्स के बीच में या बाकी सारी चीजों के बीच में. Probably they would have been having a very hardware or AIR kind of a setup. So how different was your setup versus this? And my second question is, every time Europe or baki sari jagah where this paper is actually approved, like every time somebody watches an advertisement, how much money you make?
no, so we actually did this patent more because more as a defense. Okay.
Okay.
So our idea was not to actually. So we did not have leased out this tech to anybody. It was our meant for our own platform only, right?
Oh,
But it because this space already had a lot of things, so we don't want to be in a situation where somebody says, "Look, this is what my idea is." And that actually is that's why you should also. So we didn't do patent for the patent sake, but it is more of that. Okay, if you
right.
have your preference, that means you know that okay, this is your core initiative.
Hmm.
Uh, the see, I think very few people actually understand. Every Doordarshan tower is a broadcast television system by itself, right? These are not satellite television; these are a terrestrial television system. But now they have moved to satellite television. So when you do satellite television, entire India will see the same spot, and there
Hmm.
is absolutely nothing that a TV channel can do about it,
Yeah.
right? So this was a tech which allowed them to be local. So the way to tap into local TV markets and all, local advertisers per se, they start out with all the regional channels or whatever. But in reality, what they are really behind is
Yeah.
that your jewelry store has enough money to put full-time banner ads on newspapers, but they can actually have a brand on a TV channel. But
Yeah.
there will be waste if they do all India. So be and the name is Viewbites. Okay, so I think what Mr. Balakrishnan at that time actually had told me some very early. I think I'm talking about 2007, 8, right? I said, why name Viewbites?
Yeah.
And his simple answer was, in the time to come, in very short time to come, people will watch content in a very small durations while they're on bus or whatever.
That's right.
And and Viewbites is one of the platform which will get there, that you can be anywhere right at the middle of it when people are just consuming this fast, small footprint content. I think the word reel or TikTok didn't exist then, but
Yeah.
his vision was to be,
Yeah.
making Viewbites at positioned around that. But yes, that's
Would have been
uh,
such a wonderful experience to work with a visionary like that, right? Like you get to learn so much.
yes.
Was
Correct.
you already
It is.
forecasted
I
that?
think I built my. I mean, I was head of tech back in 2007. Since then, and I think when I was at the start and what I was at the end, I think it was completely two different things. Right.
Right.
It is tremendous opportunity to learn, tremendous freedom to play and sort of experiment, and we had a significant challenging things. So one of the best thing I had is I had my team for I think 5 7 years. Whoever joined and then almost never left. Okay, is more of a team that I had,
Wow.
and so that is the kind of culture really brings you a super focus on purely solving quality problems and doing uh, innovative stuff every single day, having faced the challenge every single day. There will be some new challenge that across India there are a whole bunch of type of ways people run their channels and how they feed, and everything has to be integrated. Every single day there will be some sort of a new fight, but that's what makes it totally worth it.
I mean, it's so rare to have or find that culture or people, or that work goal कि हाँ ऐसा कुछ करना है. It's getting rare
Yes.
with every passing day, but yeah, it's so good to just go back and refresh our memory and think about, okay, तो अच्छा किया हमने. Okay.
Yes.
Then this was such an amazing and heartfelt conversation for an engineer to have on an amazing,
Yes.
amazing weekend. And this will come out very soon for people to watch. But I really can't thank you enough. And I actually feel the timing of this podcast is so right कि ये सारे टॉपिक्स पे हम बात कर सके, right? Because had it been a little earlier, कुछ और टॉपिक्स पे बात करते. I think the timing is so perfect. And the frequency of our thoughts also just kept matching. So it made the conversation even more beautiful. Can't thank you enough, seriously.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.